Ask how should an ammeter be connected to an electrical circuit? It should be connected to a live circuit in series. Okay, go back and look at the video to make sure you understand what the difference is between connecting a meter in series and in parallel. 3 rules of a series circuit. You should know them by now. It's on page 86 in your book. Make sure you know those. Parallel circuit is on 80. One of them's on 82. One of them's on 86. Make sure you know both of them. Now, here's what I wanted to go through, and it talked about what did you least understand about these chapters. Okay? Let's look at some of the responses that I've got from this, and let's see if I can help you out with it. All right, the first one here says, I didn't really understand or translate milliamps and millivolts like in questions 23 and 15. All right, well, let's go back and look at questions 23 and 15. And let's go back here. And let's scroll up a little bit. Let's see if we can find questions 23. It asks you that digital multimeter is set on the millivolt scale and the meter face displays 632. This reading means how many volts? Well, first off, we've got to understand our scales. And I did this in an earlier video. But the best way that I can explain this, the very best way I can explain this to you is to look at your scale, is to look at it on a scale. Okay? Where your base unit is here. Whether that be ohms, whether that be amps, or whether that be voltage, you've got a base unit. Okay? As we move this way, we go into kilo. Kilo means 1,000. Okay? As we continue going, we get down here to mega, which means 1 million. Okay, and when we go this way, we're going to get down here to milli, which means 1/1000. And those are probably going to be the only 3 that we deal with. Okay, so if you kind of keep this in mind, it's very similar to like converting these units of measurements, really. Okay, so let's say, these are probably some that you're familiar with. Let's say here that you're familiar with an inch, a foot, and a yard. Well, I know that 1 foot is equal to 1/3 of a yard, and it's equal to 12 inches. Now, I just know that because I know the standard system. But how many millivolts are in a volt, how many volts in a kilovolt, and how many megavolts are in a volt? Now, that can be a little bit more confusing. All right, so what if I'm looking at, say, this, and I'm coming up here, and so I want to come back to my scale and say, okay, I've got 1,000 millivolts. Okay, how many volts do I have? Okay, what we're going to do is, if we move this way on the scale, in other words, millivolt, volt, kilovolt, megavolt, we're going to move the decimal point the opposite direction. So what's that mean? We got 1,000 millivolts and we want to go to volts. We're going to move the decimal point 3 spots that way, just like this right here. So if I take it and I've got 1,000, and my decimal point actually right here, if we move it back 3 spots in that direction, I'm going to get 1. So 1,000 millivolts is equal to 1 volt. Now as I continue moving this way, I'm going to move it back 3 more spots, right? So now I'm stuck here with a 1.000. And we know that you know, you've got, if you want to add zeros to the left, it's the same number. So now if I want to keep on going, 1, 2, 3, I realize that it is equal to 0.001 kilovolts. Now, for me to continue, if I'm going to go from kilovolts to millivolts, I got to move it 3 more spots. Okay, so I'll go here where I've got 0.001. Okay, and I'm going to have to get 3 more spots. 1, 2, 3, and put it there. So now for a megavolt, I'm going to have 0.000001. Okay, that's megavolts, that's kilovolts, that's volts, and that's millivolts. So what's important to remember is all of these numbers are exactly the same measurement. If I measure 1/1000th of a kilovolt, I've got a volt. I've also got 1,000 millivolts. They're all the same. It's like saying 12 inches, 1 foot, 1/3 of a yard. Okay, we could say it was. We could also say it was 1/5280th of a mile. Okay, is a foot. We could go to all these different measurements, but it's important that you know how to convert between the two, because we're going to use them a lot in the upcoming when we measure with a meter. Got some folks that say I'm making different calculations for different formulas. I hope we've kind of cleared that up. Not knowing how to come up with a portion for each leg. All you got to remember is how to find resistance in a parallel circuit and Ohm's law. You can solve everything knowing those things. We got 5 different ways to find resistance in a parallel circuit, and then we use Ohm's law. Okay. The questions finding total resistance are a little confusing. I understand them. I just need more practice. I also feel the need to go over series and parallel circuits on my own time. And that's the truth. If you don't do this stuff on your own time, you're going to have to sit down and try to figure out, like the problems we just went over. Test yourself. See if you can get it again. The formulas for getting total resistance. So that resistance total resistance is giving us a little bit of a problem. But you know, I can give you some more practice problems, and I will this week. You're just gonna have to go back through it and sit down until you figure it out. A lot of it's just formulas and knowing when to apply those formulas. Need more practice for multimeters? Don't you worry, you're gonna get plenty before this course is over. Simplifying, I guess we're talking about simplifying parallel circuits. We can do a little bit about that. Different calculations will put my brain into overload. I know it seems like a lot, but you know, all this stuff will kind of come together. It's really not that many. Like I'm talking about, we're talking about just a few calculations, and I don't think it's really the amount of calculations that's bothering you. It's just knowing, and correct me if I'm, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest issue is knowing when to use what formula. I think that causes a lot of issues. So maybe we need to just take a second or two and go back and talk about that a little bit, because that seems to be basically the biggest problem we're having in this course as a whole. And I wanted you to see what everybody said, because it's a good chance you're having the same problem. So when we're in class, don't be ashamed to ask a question. You know, chances are if you don't know it, there's a lot of other folks sitting there that don't know it either, and they're probably thinking, man, I wish somebody to ask. So yeah, just take a chat, just, you know, ask. Don't worry about it. Let me talk about these formulas a little bit more, and I'm going to do that like in the next video, since YouTube won't let you post anything over 10 minutes.